discussing something. Hello, everybody. For today, I am joined by my friends, and we are going to be chatting spoilers for Apothecary Diaries Season 2, and we're just going to jump straight into it. I actually think it will be nice to use the very end as a jumping off point because there's so much to discuss from this season, but I want to start kind of working our way backwards. One, because part of what makes Apothecary Diaries so good is how everything comes together and all the mysteries turn out to be connected in their own ways, but then also because it's fresh in our heads. We just watched the ending. And I think it's fair to start with the very last scene that we get. And I know, Christy, for you, you were a little sad because you were like, I have a theory. And then they kind of revealed what your theory was. But you can go ahead and kick it off with just this character in general, your thoughts about the ending, but also how you felt about this character and her role throughout the season.
Yeah, so I was completely blindsided by the reveal. I don't know, like, if that is a common thing that happens to people or I'm just, like, super unobservant. Because when I watched it the first time, I'm just, like, my head is in the clouds. I'm just thinking about Mamo and Jinshi. I'm like, other stuff is, like, whatever. They'll explain it at the end, I'm sure. So I'm sure, like, I missed, like, so many clues. Because when I went back, I just did my, like, whole rewatch marathon. I was like, there were so many clues as to her identity. And I'm like, I sent you guys like messages. I was like, I should have realized at this point. Or yeah. I should have realized then. So yeah, I was very surprised. But I'm so glad that like I wasn't spoiled because I'm sure spoilers were abundant everywhere. So it's like it was one of those feelings when you're reading like a really good book and there's like a plot twist and you know it's just I love that feeling where you just are completely blindsided by something that was like in your face the whole time.
Yeah, there's a few different things, and I do think that the show ends up kind of cluing you in later because even Mao Mao has like, oh, I should have known, and she thinks about when the Empress Dowager was coming through how she seemed to go out of her way to hide. But because like you, we rewatched the second season, and right at the opening sequence, you see when Jinshi is on his way to that concubine's pavilion that she's right there running out with the other servants, and she stops to bow. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's right there from the start. I was really surprised by that. So, and I agree, they had a lot of things. I did suspect, and especially too, like the hint of when they go to the baths together and she seems surprised that it's so hot. And she didn't know, and you're like, shouldn't you have known? Because you're a servant girl. And like she kind of looks like her a little bit. And anytime anybody has even remotely similar features in this show, I'm like, are they somehow related or is this some kind of connection? So, but I think that the setup was there, but like you're saying, I think it was a pretty good twist for a lot of people. Now, Sarah already kind of had some hints because of the light novels that you have read.
Yeah, well, I actually was spoiled even before I started reading the light novels. So it was probably like, maybe like 2 or 3 episodes in, people online were already like, oh my god, there she is. And I'm like,
well, yeah,
thanks. So I really didn't have any time to like pick up on if there was something going on there because I knew pretty much right away that she was not who she said she was. So
they did try to like trick you a lot though by showing like Lolan and Shisui in like the same scene. So like even if you're suspecting something, you're probably like, oh, like, you know, it's probably just a coincidence. But then they reveal later, it's like, oh, she was an impersonator all the time.
That's what I kept thinking. I'm like, I feel like that's her. And then exactly what you just described, they would show the concubine and then you're like, okay, maybe it's not though. But and that's why I thought maybe she's related or something. Or maybe I thought maybe she's the real one and they've had one there the whole time. Like she's not actually, but it was more intricate than that where it's like the swapping. Sarah, do you feel like your feelings, because we'll talk about our feelings about the character overall, but did you feel like your feelings were impacted because you already knew? So then you maybe were like, she's not, I don't know if I feel as connected to her, or was it the opposite where you felt more connected to her because you kind of knew?
Yeah, I don't think I felt as connected to her because like if I didn't know, I would be like, oh my god, like her and Mao Mao are friends, like, and I feel like I would have kind of like felt that like kind of emotional arc of them being friends, but then Mao Mao realizing that maybe she didn't know her at all, whereas like I kind of went into it knowing that Mao Mao didn't actually really know her. So
Enrique, what are your thoughts about this character? I'm actually really excited because you got the whole Apothecary Diaries experience in such a short amount of time because you got
Yeah.
Crunchyroll so that you could watch it, and then you watched all of seasons 1 and 2. So it was probably kind
Yeah.
of a roller coaster for you.
Yeah, because I do remember like texting you like, "What the flip is going on?" And I would ask you about an ancestry and whatnot. You say it gets complicated, but with the Lulan stuff, I had no idea. I was just when it comes to like anime things, I'm like I'm focusing on the sub, so I'm focusing on reading what they're saying. So my brain didn't click on, oh, she looks like her, or oh, she's like subtly running away. Like it did not click. So when the reveal happened, I was like,
shocked.
God, she lied.
Yeah, that's what I think, because Mao Mao is so lovable, and kind of what your point was, Sarah, about like, oh, Mao Mao doesn't really know her. And there's that great conversation between her and Jinshi in that last episode of like, were you friends? And Mao Mao said, I don't know, basically. And the idea that they don't have the full story. And it's really sad because normally Mao Mao is somebody who, even though she doesn't have the easiest time figuring out people necessarily, she usually can trust her instincts to lead her in the right directions when it comes to deducing information. So it's almost like she was tricked, and then to be tricked by somebody that she cared about when she's so resistant to being open to other people. And it's like, it's sad because it's like she allowed herself to feel those things. And I think she wants to believe they were true, but then at the same time, she's unsure. So it's kind of like a shaking of her identity in a sense, I think, or her confidence in herself and her abilities. But so Sean, obviously we watched it together and we speculate as we watched, but what were your thoughts about this character?
Yes, there was speculation from you aloud that potentially there was a connection. I think maybe while watching it, I thought if there was one, it was somehow the related situation. I don't think I wasn't like, it's definitely her. They do have like the same eye color. That's probably the most striking feature. I was gonna say something else. Oh, but I also, like, in hindsight, I'm like watching again, like, why were we introduced to this girl who just likes bugs? You know what I mean? Like, I think the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, well, guess she has a a friend and
a new character.
Really likes bugs, you know. That's fine. You know, I kind of was just like rolling with it. I liked her, you know, as a simple bug loving character, but I thought she was just there to be more like I guess like comedic interaction,
and somebody who kind of contrasts Mao Mao more overtly. I think they kind of trick you to your point, Sean, about how you're like, oh, why are we following this character? She's the first character who's come along that has a lot of similarities to Mao Mao, so I feel like you almost assume she's there to present somebody who's like Mao Mao's equal in interests and quirkiness and how she's different from other people and things like that. So it seems like, oh, it's just a new friend, but one that's for once, you know, Mao Mao is like when Mao Mao has that moment earlier on where she's like, I don't run around and chase after bugs. This is the person people think they're mistaking me for. And it's like, well, yeah, you did pounce on a blizzard tail. So I do feel like they kind of trick you in that sense too, where they sort of lead you astray into thinking that she's more fitting that role as opposed to the role she is fitting. Did any of you feel like kind of betrayed almost in a sense, or because she has there's so much complexity to the way that her and her father in their own ways were kind of trying to take down all of the rot, you could say, within the palace. So did you feel like she had a really heroic arc, that it was a really tragic arc? Did you feel like sometimes you wish she could have been more forthcoming? I will say, I think for me, the biggest shock about her character was her connection to Sure. That was the part that I was not piecing together basically at all. So I think that kind of humanized her, among other things, certainly, but that especially, of course, with her relationship with her half-sister. I think that brought a lot to her. But we'll go in reverse this time. Sean, what were your thoughts about, like, did you feel betrayed, or did you feel like you really felt she was a tragic character? What were your thoughts on that?
I didn't feel betrayed. I did think she was tragic, though. I would have liked her to have been the bug-loving gal she was, not caught up in all this intrigue. Although I'm hoping, since we know she's alive now, I'm kind of hoping she just sails away and looks at bugs somewhere else, you know? So I really thought she was dead for a minute. I do think when we rewatched it, I think I missed a little twinkle, you know, like at the end of the episode, you're like, oh, she might be alive. I think that was a little bit more clear watching it again. But yeah, I think she was a tragic character. I was sad for her circumstances. Her mother is the worst, and her sabotaging the guns that her mom blows up, I was like, that's a nice move.
Which is especially sad when you know that she was pretty sure her mom would try to shoot her. Like that was her thought. Like, she's probably going to try to take this from me and possibly shoot me with it.
I mean, she definitely baited her, but if you know your mom will take the bait in a way where she'll try to kill you, that's not a good situation.
No. And her father, it was like, he's caught between these. He wants to be loyal to the previous emperor, who you're like, okay, you know, but, and then at the same time, he's can't stand up to this horrible woman. And so much of the story, and it's weird because, you know, you would think that this character wouldn't have that much connection, but it feels like everything this particular season, a lot of it has its roots in essentially the generational trauma of the actions of the previous emperor. Even this character, because the whole reason that all of this came along was in part because, one, her mother is horrible, but her mother, I don't think she was justified necessarily in the way that she behaved. Some of the other characters, you understand where their hatred has come from, but it was ripple effects of his actions throughout. And also the half sister being related to the previous emperor as well. Things like that, where it's just like, ugh, if you hadn't been the horrible human that you were, which we'll get to him. Enrique, what did you think though about, were you pretty sad about her character? Were you at the end of the day kind of happy for her that she got away? What were your thoughts? Oh, sorry, you're muted. Let's make sure. There we go.
It was a roller coaster of emotion, because when she kidnapped Mao Mao, I was like, oh my God, this lady, I hate her so much. And I did. Like, if she just asked Mao Mao, I'm pretty sure she would have been like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. But they kidnapped her, and I'm like, oh my God, I hate her. Why are they doing this to Mao Mao? And then when I found out like the backstory of like her evil mom and how they treated her half sister poorly and whatnot, I was like, oh, okay, I guess it makes sense that she's trying to me, it started to justify how she was doing everything she was doing, kind of thing. And the fact that out of everybody, when they told her like, we have to torture Mao Mao or whichever, the mom makes the daughter decide, and she throws her in that room with all the bugs and spiders, and Mao Mao just like eats them.
Yeah.
I love that. I was like, okay, so she got points back for me because of that, because that was just a funny scene. This is spoiler, right? Spoiler.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
wasn't sure.
Very ending.
Sorry, it's too early in the morning. My brain is waking up. So when she died, I was like, oh, that's sad, because she's like dancing in the dress, and it brought back to when Mao Mao was dancing in the dress, and then the other lady who was dancing in the moonlight, and I was like, oh. So I felt a little bad that I hated her so much because of that. And then when she died and that little glint in the ocean, I was like, did they just find her corpse? That's going to be really sad. They just find her body frozen. And I'm glad she survived, though, honestly, with her new persona, Tao Mao.
I will say there was a little part of me for a second, and like kind of as a joke, but kind of serious at the same time, because I messaged you, Sarah. I was like, she's trading the hairpin for this stupid jade bug. But also, I think very clearly she's trying to, in her own way, return the hairpin, because the name she gives she knows that name's going to get back to Mao Mao somehow. Like this pin is going to be seen because it's such a significant item that it's going to be found. And when they eventually question, I think she trusts that the investigation is going to lead Mao Mao to knowing that she's alive. But it's not so much information that it will clue everybody in to the fact that she's alive. And then a really subtle detail about her character that I really liked is when you find out that her sister's name was originally, I'm going to butcher these names, but it was originally Shisui, the fake name that she took as a servant. Like that was her half-sister's original name. And that's the name she took on, even though it was similar. And then for her at the end to take on a name that's kind of similar to Mao Mao, in a sense, I feel like that has a lot of significance to just how much Mao Mao meant to her. Because I think there's a part of her that would have really liked to have had more time. I think she saw Mao Mao in a way as kind of a sister also. And it's one of those things where it's like she's not really had a lot of opportunities to live life fully. So I'm glad that she has that now. It's just so tragic because you want her to be able to have that alongside Mao. There's no way, though. She can never return in this sense because of the fact that she kind of painted herself as the villain. But Enrique, I want to bounce off of what you were saying about the dancing, because when Mao Mao's dancing, I feel like they foreshadowed that, like it almost seems like they were prepared for this season's finale within the first seasons. Because when Mao Mao's dancing, and at one point she stumbles and like Jinshi reaches out for her and then pulls her back. And then this time you see Sure reach out for Laolin, and then she can't pull her back. And you're like, no, why would you do that to us? Why would you have these parallels? And like, Christy, you just rewatched also all of season 1. Did you see like there's the obvious, parallels with the dancing, but that like reaching out for the person and them slipping away. Did that make you sad when you saw that?
I haven't finished my rewatch of season 1. I just
dang it.
So I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay, well you'll know now, I guess.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it.
I just want to interject and say,
yes.
Although ultimately I'm happy that she's alive, which is what I said originally, there is a crazy part of me that is like, well, now that scene where, she's reached for isn't quite as tragic because she's alive now.
But her sister doesn't know.
That's true. The sister doesn't know, but I was so sad. I was like, it's such a sad scene. Now it's like sort of sad. It's less sad.
I think it's still really, really sad for her sister, which we'll get into her as well. But I feel like she's the most tragic character out of all of this. Maybe not out of all of this, but in relation to this clan, I feel like the sister has gone through so much. But Sarah, what were your thoughts as far as, I know we talked about a little bit that you had more insight, so it slightly changed your shaping of this character in your mind. But would you say that ultimately you were really sad for her?
Yeah, I mean, even though I knew who she was, I didn't know like the full details before reading it. But like seeing her like relationship with her mother, and like also seeing her mother treat her sister poorly, like when she gets her out of like the cabinet or whatever. And I think is it her father that thinks like, oh, it looks like she's done this before.
Yeah.
And I was like, just like having to like live through that and like have her mother just use her as like a pawn. I was like, this is so depressing. Like I understand why she's doing what she's doing because she's like lived through all of this. So yeah, I just think she's pretty tragic.
And the resilience to go through all that and come out of it as happy-go-lucky as she is too, I think speaks to her character a lot. And then Christy, were you really, really sad for her for most of it? Or are you, because I think the general assessment of this character is that she is a very tragic character a lot of us feel for. But do you have any unpopular opinions like, I found her annoying or something like that? Or are you like, no, I'm with everybody else, I'm in the same camp?
No, I ended up really liking her. Like, I liked her when she was introduced as Shisui. I thought she was so cute, and I liked her friendship with Mamo and Shaolan. Like, the trio they're just so cute together. And like, especially in the ending where it shows like, okay, so there's a part in the ending where it shows the three of them together, but there's like a gap between Mamo and Shaolan versus Shisui. And then it's like, I didn't think anything at the moment, but then it's like you watch it back and it's like, that gap means something.
I know.
And you mentioned how like Mama must be, you know, kind of sad that she thought she found a new friend, but she doesn't know if it's like real or not. But I feel like we, as the audience, we know that it was real on Shisui's side, because when she was Shisui, that was like the only time she could really be herself. Yeah, I found her really tragic to be in the situation that she was in, but she found like little ways to rebel against her mother. And then also you mentioned that I was kind of sad that they revealed what they did, like that she was alive at the ending, because I was like, I was like, that's one of my questions. Like, she's not really dead, because as soon as Jinshi was like, oh, that's the last time I saw Lola, I'm like, okay.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't find her body, no death. And then I noticed that they shot her in the chest, which is exactly where the pin was. And I'm, because like it's just weird that Mama would give her the pin and have her like keep it there if it didn't come out to anything. So I thought I was big braining.
Well,
you
and
were. I thought she was dead. Like, she's gone. She's
I think
dead.
I don't know. I'm always, whenever you have characters with different personalities or different identities, is probably a better way to put it. Anytime somebody specifically uses one of their names, I'm like, but what about the other? Are you actually saying this? So when Jinshi said it's the last time I saw Laolin, I was like, does that mean she got to live as someone else though? Like, did she get away? And also I was curious because when I rewatched it, there is a lot of her kind of standing on the edges of the buildings in the stronghold, just kind of looking out. And I'm like, is she assessing in hindsight, right? When I rewatched it, not the first time, obviously, but I was like, is she assessing her likelihood of surviving if she were to jump or fall from one of these? Because she does kind of go out and, that could be nothing, right? That might just be I'm theorizing because I have the hindsight now. But we brought up a character that I feel like we have to talk about, because this was, I think, weirdly, the plot line that hit me really hard in the finale is when we find out that Shaolin never got to have this. She didn't even know about what had happened with.
Can I ask one more thing about?
Yeah.
Mulan, Shishui. Sorry. So
No,
she
please.
was prepared to die, right? I mean, like, the odds of her getting shot right there is like nothing. Like, I guess I don't know if that's even a question, but like, do you think she wants to live on, or do you think she wanted to die? I mean, I almost feel like she wanted her like whole clan to.
I think she wanted.
Pay for.
I think she wanted to end everything that her clan had been doing, and I think she wanted to kind of take that situation out. I think she wanted those kids and her sister to get to have a life that was outside of all of that. But I don't think she wanted to die, but I don't think she wanted to keep living within this situation. And I think that this was really the best case scenario, because I don't think that she actively.
I mean, lucky break. I guess that's what.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting shot at by a firing squad. That's, you know.
Well, I do, and she has that line at the very end of like, "Oh, somewhere across the sea." That sounds nice. Like, I think she's happy with the second chance that she got and the opportunity she has to actually live. But I think she was fully prepared to die based off of the way she was talking to Mao Mao and the kind of cryptic things that she was saying to her beforehand. I think that's my assessment. I don't know. Did anybody have a different take?
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I think, how I felt. Sean, is that what you thought too?
Oh yeah. I almost wondered. I guess, like, I don't know if there's like lingering guilt that we'll see that she's even alive. But I don't know. She seemed pretty happy, so maybe I'm wrong.
She finally gets to be
who
she wants to be, just this like happy-go-lucky girl. But back to Shaolin, just because I was no, but it's still tied to Shisui, because the letters. Okay, the letter part, I was like, Mama's gonna start crying, and if she starts crying, I might start crying because this is like too much, and like she's trying so hard to write her letters, and you're like, oh my gosh. So that part was really sad. But then I'm like, what did she say in the letter to Shisui? Like, what did she? I'm curious what she wrote to her, and you don't, at least in this episode, you don't know, you don't see it in the season, I should say. Who knows if maybe we'll get some clues about it later. But the fact that she didn't know, because I was telling Sean before we watched the finale that I was like, oh my gosh, how's she going to feel when they have their reunion finally? She's got to be so scared for Mao Mao or worried, or she's going to find out, or she's going to have a secret kept from her or something. And then like you're like, oh, they never even got to see each other again. They have to see each other again later. I was just so sad, but also again, why I wanted to kind of start from the end and work backwards is that there's so much to Mao Mao opening up as a character, I think, through her relationship with Shisui and Xiaolin. And the fact that part of this is, I think, due to Mao Mao having the big sisters at the Verdigris house. So there's a little more comfort in opening up to this sort of relationship because it's what's been shown to her. So then she's able to have that in this sort of big sister way with Xiaolin because it's been modeled to her. And they're the people who have shown her the most affection and that she's received affection from the most openly. So I feel like it makes sense that that was sort of a very significant part of Mao Mao's character growth over the season. And just like she being like proud of her and going to check in on her at school and everything. And I want to say the fact that Jinshi, before even it's not like it was Mao Mao's idea. Jinshi's the one that's like, I think we should have a school for these girls to get to learn and everything. So the idea that through his actions to start this school, that's what allowed for this letter to be written in the end. Also, it's just like such a nice full circle moment, but there's so much to get into about this character and their relationships. And Sarah, I want you to get a chance to start this go around. So what are your thoughts? I'm sure we're going to all bounce off of each other when it comes to this dynamic. Yeah.
I just think that she is so cute and so precious. And like, I was crying when Mao Mao was reading the letter, even though I'd read it already. Like I'd read that scene. I was still like, oh my God, I can't handle this.
Look at her sweet little face.
and I love that she's like, she wears the bows that Mao Mao bought her from now on.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I think it's during that scene that they do like a little like flashback of the three of them together. And like you can see how fondly Mao Mao is looking at her. And I was like, I'm going to lose it. Like, this is too much.
I know. It's so sad. And so Enrique, I'm pretty sure you said that Xiaolin was your favorite character from the first season. So were you, first off, you had to have enjoyed how much Xiaolin we got in the second season, but then also were you like, no, about the ending? And don't forget to unmute this time. You're good. You're now you've muted. Hold on. There you go.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
I do love Xiaolin. I'm definitely going to butcher everyone's name because you're always correcting me when I say Jinshi multiple times.
Well, because you'll say Jinxing with an ing sound.
I don't think so. I don't recall this. I'll have my
you also
lawyer
would say you also will say Jinshin, and I'm always like Jinshi. But okay, I don't know the rest of their names.
Language. All right. It's not my first language. So Xiaolin is obviously my favorite. I loved her in season 1 because she was just like all so happy and cheerful. And then we did get more of her in this season. I was like, oh my goodness, she's much more adorable trying to learn. And she's like scribbling on the dirt and everything. And Mao Mao was like teaching her some words like, oh, okay. It's like, maybe we should start with writing your name. I don't remember what she was having her write. I don't remember what it was, but like maybe we should write how to like writing your name. She was okay. She was so excited, so pumped. The exact opposite of the goth mommy troop that I have. And I was just like, she's so adorable. And then with the letter writing, I got teary-eyed. I was like, oh my God, this is so sad. She doesn't know. They didn't go back to tell her that Mao Mao's okay or that Lulan is gone or all this stuff. They just like disappeared, went their separate ways at other world. Oh my God. It's gonna break her little heart.
She has no way of contacting her. Mao Mao doesn't have any way of contacting her, which is so sad. And then also just the fact that like I think Mao Mao obviously genuinely cares. You see so many times where she's like and she just like pets her head and stuff and she's like Mao Mao and you're like, oh, they're so cute. But then I think Mao Mao's I mean, you see throughout both seasons frequently they kind of not frequently, but here and there they remind you that Mao Mao doesn't always seem to really consider how other people feel in a given moment, and how she doesn't feel like she understands human behavior necessarily. And I feel like this kind of bit her in the butt in this moment, because she probably technically had the opportunity to go find Xiaolin before she left the rear palace. And I don't think she even thought to do it, because she frequently considers herself selfish, which we know she's not. She's looking out for these kids. She's super proud of Xiaolin, and she is helping everybody all the time. But she's not necessarily actively thinking about other people, just because that's not really in her, the way she's wired. And she perceives it as selfishness, which I don't think is correct. And I think that feeds into the idea of Mao Mao potentially being an unreliable narrator, because her assessment of herself in relation to other people is not quite accurate. But I feel like this is one of those moments where it really dawned on her just how much her relationship with Xiaolin meant to her. And that's why I think part of the reason that she was crying. And I think there was like, she was proud of her, but she was so sad because everything she'd had. She even thinks of it as like, when she thinks about the three friends, the Sarah, you talked about the scene, the flashback where you see her looking happy. She words it in a way that's like, it was mostly good. Like and it's like even her describing it in that way, because I feel like Mao Mao, it's not that she's pessimistic, but she's like neutral, I would say. She starts from a place of neutrality in most circumstances, unless it's like poisons or herbs, of course. But in this scenario, she worded it with an edge of positivity. And for her, that's a huge deal. So I feel like it's just that much more tragic in that moment. But yes, Xiaolin is just the absolute cutest all the time. Like when she's like, I want to find work. Do you have connections and stuff like that? And I want to point out that I think talking about like how Mao Mao learns to trust, or how Mao Mao shows the way that she cares for people. When she gets asked about, do you have any connections? Of course, initially she's like, well, I know women at the Verdigrease house, but that's like a last resort. And then her first thought after that is like, maybe I should ask Jinshi. And then she realizes like, well, but he's caught up in whatever he's caught up in. But the fact that she trusts him enough, I think says a lot too, that she would have gone to him initially to ask for connections for Xiaolin. Because this is somebody that she borderline cares about more than most other people, meaning Xiaolin. I think she really wants to ensure she's looked after. So I think that it's one of those subtle ways that you start to see that she actually does value Jinshi as well, and trust him in an area where a lot of times you can't trust people with these young girls given the circumstances. So I feel like that's really well done as well. Christy, what are your thoughts on Precious, Xiaolin, and the relationship between the other two?
Yeah, she's so cute, and I love how like her Mao Mao and her relationship with Xiaolin shows how much growth Mao Mao has had, because one of the things I noticed when I was rewatching the first season was Mao Mao was like, you know, she just doesn't understand what it like, how someone can care about someone else so much. Sorry, which she was saying in regards to how much Feng Ming would sacrifice for Aduo. And she's just like, you know, I will never do that. But then like you see her go out of her way then to help these people, especially when Xiaolin had the accident with the ice. Like Mama didn't need to help her fix that. And she even thought like, oh, at first I just thought she was this useful gossipy girl who I could get information from. But as time progressed, they actually start to become real friends. Yeah, I was surprised when Mama cried. I was like, that is a big step for her. So in a way, I was also proud of her. But yeah, that scene was the one that got me too. And just seeing like Xiaolin now being able to write a full letter, amazing.
It's so cute. And just that her being so proud of herself, because when there's that moment where she's talking to the teacher at the school, Mao Mao is, and then Xiaolin's like, Mao Mao, come look at my writing. And you're like, oh, the fact that she's so excited to share. And I do think an unappreciated, but perhaps now will be a more appreciated moment is the Rose episode in season 1, where you kind of see this as Mao Mao facing off against Lacan in a sense, and matching him. And obviously you see Xiaolin and you're like, oh, she's helping her. She's just like excited to be around Mao Mao. She's very selfless in a lot of ways. And she's just so helpful, and it shows how hard she's willing to work as well, even though I think she gets sometimes seen as like, oh, she gets easily distracted and stuff like that. But she really wanted to help Mao Mao in that moment. And I feel like Mao Mao is unaccustomed to having people go out of their way to help her. So I feel like without even realizing it, Xiaolin was kind of getting like under Mao Mao's skin in a good way. And then it kind of led to the affection that Mao Mao had later on. Sean, what are your thoughts?
I was going to bring up the Mao Mao just being proud of her and like squeezing her head or whatever she does. Like, and at first I was like, it's kind of weird. Just say like, hey, I'm proud of you. You know, what's with the like, you know, like, but then my other thought, maybe I'm thinking too deeply upon her squeezing her head, but Mao Mao was growing up like left alone, right? Like she didn't have like physical affection really. So I wonder if getting Mao Mao to be physically affectionate would take a lot. So like that's how she's like, I'm really proud of you. Squeeze your head, you know, whatever weird thing she does, because she doesn't really touch people a whole lot. I mean, well, we'll get to that also.
Yeah, we'll get to that next. I feel like
but yeah, she does it a couple times where she just like looks at Xiaolin happily and just like rubs her head or whatever. What's she do? She just kind of like grabs her.
She
face.
like rubs the top of her head, and which I think I'd have to because you're in your rewatch of season 1, Christy, you'll have to let me know that when Mao Mao goes back to the Verdegrees house and she's taking a bath and the big sisters come in too, don't they kind of do something similar to her? Where they like kind of treat her and she'll be like, you know, in that same way.
A pet.
What?
It's kind of like petting a pet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's a weird action to do, certainly, but you know.
Xiaolin loves it though. She's like, meow meow, but it like happily loves it. And it's adorable. Look at how happy you are, Enrique. I just because she's so cute. I know. The constant face grabbing. Did you have more to add about this character before we shift away from some aspects of her?
I do love that when they made the ice cream treat, she's like, Mao Mao! Like she's so happy. I just love her so much.
I thought it was cute when now that they're in the clear and she's not afraid that she's going to get in trouble. She's like, maybe we can have some more though. She's all excited. She knows how to live life, you know, she knows how to enjoy. When she's crying though, and as Mao Mao calls him, the quack doctor is like, it's okay, comforting her. And she's just bawling her eyes out. You're like, oh, this is so sad.
You know, we are talking about how it's sad that her letter is sad because, you know, Mao Mao doesn't know where she is, but she did get her connections. You know, she can write, and now she's got a job. That's what she wanted.
And it's the hairpin that she was so admiring, right? The lady who gave her that hairpin is the one that, I want her, I'm not going to lie, I want her and Li Shu to be friends because Li Shu has had it so rough and I need somebody to be that girl's friend besides her food taster turned lady in waiting. Because we'll talk about Li Shu probably as well. But now, because Sean, you transitioned us so perfectly into talking about the ways that certain characters show physical affection to each other and how it's not always normal. So we'll talk about this. I do want to know.
Let's cut to the chase. The biting.
Yeah, 40 minutes in. Let's talk about it. So there's a number of things. So your point about, you know, like to get Mao Mao to be physically affectionate, like that's a huge step for her, and not even just physically affectionate, but for her to be physical in nature in any way, really, with another person. It doesn't even have to be like affection, because pretty much the only time is when she's like bonking that one kid on the head. But
or she's slapping somebody.
Yes, when she's slapping the ladies in waiting, and I'm just like, I feel like Jinshi might have enjoyed that too. Anyway, so she does have that moment when Jinshi is yelling at Li Shu's ladies in waiting, and she initially is like, oh, and she looks like kind of happy about it. But anyway, so I think, Christy, you very perfectly captured, and I made sure to have it, the idea of cute aggression. Would you like to describe this concept to people, or you can just read it off if you would like?
So, like, it's when you see something that is so freaking cute, like your brain cannot compute and you don't know what to do with it. And you're just like, just so freaking cute. I just want to, you know?
Thank you for that.
So can I just interject? I finally
course.
figured out why I know this term because I could not figure it out. And I haven't read the book yet, but there's a book called Bubblegum. And in Bubblegum, there are essentially like these really cute like robots. Like almost think like maybe like a Furby or something, you know, like, but this like so cute and everyone has them, but to the point where like people start just abusing these little things because they're like, they're so cute, but they like, you know, wail on them. Anyways, that's the only reason I know that term. And
now I will share my story that I did technically text Christy and Sarah about, which is that my mom, when I was a baby, always wanted to bite my butt. And she'll tell you, she'll be like, oh, you had the cutest little baby, I just wanted to bite it. And I'm pretty sure she did, because I'm pretty sure I have memories of being a toddler, getting out of the bath and running away because I'm like, I don't want her to bite my butt. So I feel like this I'm familiar with this concept on a personal level. Enrique, you were laughing a lot about this. So have you heard this phrase and do you feel like you understand? Does it compute for you?
It computes. It's just the description that y'all are giving, especially Chrissy's like, we just want to like, it reminds me of what's that DreamWorks movie with the little kid who goes, it's so fluffy. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
I think the internet likes to just paint, and it's fine if the internet wants to paint it this way. I'm not saying it's wrong, nor am I saying I disagree necessarily, but I think a lot of people just initially jump to like, oh, Jinshi's kinky, and you're like, well, maybe that's possible. Probably on some level. As I said, I feel like he enjoyed watching Mao Mao slap that woman in season 1. It did something for him, you know, but I think that the cute aggression makes a lot of sense when you see the moments that he like really seems to look at her fondly, like when she's helping with the ice cream. So when Xiaolin's crying and Mao Mao's like trying to figure something out, and then she turns around her and he's just like leaning against, he's not doing the brooding bad boy leaning. He's like, you might as well have stars in his eyes. Do you know which scene I'm talking about? He's looking at her so fondly and like he thinks it's adorable, and she's like, ah. And then she goes and asks him for help. And then he's like, well, and like, he's obviously teasing her because he's basically like, but why is it important that you get involved? And then her explanation is like, I might not sleep well because this is going to bother me. And then that will affect my work tomorrow. And he's like giggling at her because I think in his head, he's like, you can just ask me. You know, like he's going to help her. We know he's going to help her, but she has to come up with this like ridiculous practical reason to justify it. And then he's just cracking up at her. And I think he just genuinely thinks she's so cute. And anytime she, not in a self-harm way, because we obviously have seen her be really bizarre about that. And he's not happy when that happens. But anytime she's like really giddy about something, he looks happy for her. So I definitely think the cute aggression is a good assessment of this. But, you know, Sean, like you said, you want to just cut to the chase. You want to talk about it. So, Sean, what were your thoughts about the biting scene?
I could have done without it. I'm not gonna lie. You know, so we're gonna go backward in time. The very end of that episode where he's like sprawled on the ground, sad because the kid opened the door at the worst time, and she kind of smiles at him. I'm like, that's cute. And then like when they're maybe about to kiss, I'm like, oh, like this. Go back a little further. Weird biting out of nowhere. That's where I was like, that's not where I would have started, friend. You know, I would have maybe like not gone straight for the bite. You know, I
will say the scene behind us when he's just like, he seems like he's constantly trying to hold her hand. And she 100% is like constantly trying to touch his face. The both of them, I think.
She reaches out to touch him 4 times.
Thank you for you are our reaching out tracker. But I do want to add too that I think, again, tying it back to what you were saying, Sean, about the way that Mao Mao being physically affectionate, she is not basically doing anything like this with other people unless she's like sniffing their clothes for potential harmful substances or whatever. But
true.
that's obviously a different scenario. But when because she often is the first one to kind of come forward because you see him a lot of times like draw back, and I think it's also because nobody's meant to touch him because his station, he's so high up. And I think from modern sensibilities, of course, we read some of his behavior as like crossing lines. And I don't know that we read some of her behavior as crossing lines because it's so obviously not the same. But given their stations in the context of their setting, and given that, especially in these moments, she for sure knows who he is at this point, for her to be reaching out to him 4 times in that one moment alone is definitely an indication of how much she is like she's taking steps to kind of cross those lines in their own way. And I'm not trying to imply she's crossing really problematic lines or anything like that, but those kind of lines that the two of them have between them, I feel like she actually does often go to that point as well, but we perceive his as that because of the way that we look at things from a more modern lens. But I also, because Sarah, you talked about the amount that she reached out to him. When he goes to take the wrap back from her, he could have just like taken it, but he like does this and then like drags it. You're like, they're so desperate to like get the smallest. It's funny because it's like they want the smallest bit of contact possible. It goes from that to like the most extreme form of just biting. And I jokingly texted Sarah that now that he doesn't have his hairpin, he needs a different way to basically be like, this one's mine. Because she lost the hairpin, so he's like, I gotta figure out some other way. And then Sarah, Christy, go ahead, because otherwise I could go on and on.
I have a weird question.
Oh,
I have
okay.
a weird question. Did he bite where her bruise was?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's significant too. Also, like he's trying to.
I don't know what that means. I'll
maybe
let
it's
you
like
guys
trying.
Iron out what the biting means.
I think there's a possibility that it's like a shift in making whatever. Because she said I ran into a bad person, and so in a way, it's almost like transforming that into maybe a good experience, depending on how you perceive it. But Christy, what were you gonna say?
Oh, to me, that action was more like he was trying to disinfect that area.
Yeah, that makes sense because they do say that saliva can be poisonous.
I don't know if this is a thing in like Western culture, but I see it all the time in like anime and manga where it's like, you know, it's usually the girl, she gets untouched somewhere unwanted by some other gross person, and then the male love interest would be like, I gotta disinfect that area with like his own touch or something like that.
I think that's a interesting. I don't know if
comfort because I thought it was weird, but now I think it's nicer.
And then I just wanted to say one more thing about like the touches. Oh, the one that really got me was when they were the moonlight dancing lady episode where Jinji was like dressed up as what they call the fairy,
the moon fairy
goddess or something like that, moon fairy, and then right when like the envoys appeared and he was about to go, and then Mama was like, okay, go ahead, but then he like makes a point to like grab her wrist, and I feel like it was, you know, like that extra reassurance for him. Yeah, I really like that scene.
I do think as well that we've seen him before in season 1 when he's trying to get her to learn whatever for a position that she could have, and she's like, I don't care, and she doesn't study at all because she just wants to keep doing what she wants to keep doing. So we know that over and over and over again, Mao Mao's been shown like if she's not interested in something, she does not engage. And I think the fact that she helped him so much with the moon fairy thing, because she even has like a thought of this is clearly really important to him and it's like weighing on him a lot, and then she's like, I'll see what I can do, basically. Because there's no herbs really to be gained from this. There's no interesting poisons or anything like that. She's genuinely doing it because this is her form of, I think, showing affection and care. And that's why I think the way that Mao, because a lot of times in stories like this, it's like constant blushing and like, which you kind of see from his angle. Like, it's not a mystery that he's obsessed. But I feel like Mao gets perceived as like, she like hates this guy. And I think there's a lot of subtlety in showing that Mao seems aloof with everyone. And there's a reason that she finds herself constantly in Jinshi's orbit. And sometimes the reason is of her own making. Like she's going out of her way to assist in something. But I want to know Enrique's thoughts about the biting. I want to know, what is your assessment, good sir, of this moment, but also just like their interactions in general. Let's make sure you're. Oh yeah, you're muted. We'll make sure if you hit it and it's not working, then okay, yeah, it's good.
Okay, so I was confused because this man did everything before to get her attention, to like touch her, any excuse to corner her and basically like harass her, and possible, like corner her, like lay on her, use her as a pillow. And I think y'all are right about like losing the pin, and he's like, now everyone thinks she's open game. I think he's trying to leave a hickey, like as y'all said, like leaving marking territory. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to bite someone just randomly unless you're trying to give a hickey and be like, hey, this lady's mine now, she's with me, don't you dare look at her. And the fact that she has to now leave the rear palace because of, I guess, the knowledge she has. So I guess he's like leaving the mark on her that anybody in the pleasure district knows that she's spoken for, and not try to buy her off or whatnot, because that granny will be paying to get money.
I also think there's something to the statement where he says, like, I know regular poison doesn't work on you. And I feel like maybe that was his way of being like, I don't think like a simple kiss on the cheek is going to elicit from you something that I would prefer. Because you also see in the part with the food tasting where Boston like collapses from the aphrodisiac like foods and whatever, and when she has it, she's like, I guess I'm just made of stronger stuff. So I almost kind of wonder if this is his way of being like, I know I have to like really go out of my way to make it, because he even says like, am I making myself clear? Like I think there's a part of him that's like, I don't know what to do because you could be really dense about some of this stuff, so is this clear? But Sean, I will say, you were pointing out you feel like there are other moments that you feel like are perhaps kind of on the cuter side, and I don't mind talking about their interactions in general outside of just that one, because it's the end of the season. I feel like it's going to get talked about a lot, and because they're kind of weird with each other, and I feel like people dig it. But they do have a lot of nice moments, and this to me was one of the cutest moments, where it's just like he seems shocked, because I think he is in shock, like, oh my gosh, here she is, she's safe, because he's been so wound up, and he steps forward, but he doesn't come too close, and then allows her to kind of step forward, and their interactions in this moment I thought were really sweet. So Sean, I think you were fond of this scene, correct?
I did like this scene. It was a good scene. Very good. What did she say? She says like I'm
sorry to bother you, Master Jinshi, but can you protect me? Something like that.
Yeah. I like that. I also, I don't mind her touching his scar or whatever. It's all fair game. I just my line's just at the biting. I thought it was a weird thing to do.
I don't know if anybody disagrees that it's a weird thing to do.
But I did like
some people are like, I think that's a pretty normal way to like let somebody know you like them. Yeah. No, that moment's really sweet. And I noted too, because obviously we see him completely unraveling the second that she's gone. He's totally losing control of his like, I'm supposed to present this front of being like Jinshi the eunuch. And when Lady Gyoko is giving birth and he's over there and the doctor's like, what do I do? And Lauman's just like, or they tell him like, just go take care of the cat. And he's like, okay. And Jinshi thinks like, I'm so glad there's somebody else who's like just as panicked as me right now. And you're like, oh, he's so distraught about this.
I just going back to the very, very end. I mean, the last shot of her just like working, while he's like asleep, is also great.
You were very amused.
Can't waste any time. Can't waste any time.
Two things. You were super amused when she's just like sitting there thinking, and he's like, "Don't treat me like I don't exist." And she's like, "Sorry, old habit," which you found very funny. And then I will say, even though obviously Sean's like, "What the heck about the biting?" I was like, you know, you do the whole like he's just like sleeping and she's working. That is like our dynamic a lot, because you'll be like, I'm tired, and we'll be on the couch and I'll be sitting working or reading or something, and then you're just like, I'm going to sleep here now, and I'm like, okay, and I just have to like hold stuff above. So that is very relatable for me. I think in a lot of ways. But anyway, that interaction there. Oh yes, Enrique, go ahead.
So are you telling us that Sean bites you?
No,
Is that your guys' relationship? They just randomly. That's why Sean's really put off about it, because he's like, someone else is doing my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the next time we're gaming, you are not going to let this go. You're going to be like, so maybe stop biting her. How do you know it's not me doing the biting, Enrique?
I mean, you just said you were doing the working, like you're reading, and Sean's just like, I'm sleeping here now. So.
Yeah. I do like Sean pointed out the little glint in her eye after the fact when she was like, he's just tired, and you're just like, oh. She's like, I feel like she is amused at his nature. And also I think weirdly Mao Mao brings out sides of people, like we were talking about with Laolin, where Shisui is really like her real self. And when she says her name, and in that moment where she's like, I don't know what to call her, before they go into the room with the kids, and she says Shisui, and that like shift in her eyes and like her demeanor, like, oh, that's the real self, and Mao Mao saw that. So I feel like Mao Mao was able to, because she doesn't have ulterior motives really, so it allowed for Shisui to be her real self. And I feel like Mao Mao has allowed for that with Jinshi as well. Like that's why the more silly, childish side comes out. And even when there's the scene where Surin is talking to her about him as a child, and like, well, he had to grow up in a way where his mother wanted him to be more mature, and then Mao Mao thinks about the fact that like she kind of smiles when she looks at his toys and thinks about how sometimes maybe this is why he's childish around me. Like I think she kind of likes when he's like a silly goofball, because I don't think she likes the false front at all. I think she actually does appreciate when he is more
to kind of go off of that, not so much when he's silly, but when he shows that he's actually kind of smart and not just a weirdo. I did like when she's with like the bodies of the kids, and he's like, well, why are you here? Didn't your dad say like don't like touch dead corpses or something like that? And she's like, man, he's intelligent sometimes, basically. Like he pays attention.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's like he pays us like a special amount of attention to you, especially, right? I think it's kind of funny that she's like, he's weirdly observant. And I do think to that point that she appreciates that he is intelligent. Like he actually tricked her the first time when he figured out that she can read. So the kind of cat and mouse, if you will, thing between the two of them, like he actually outsmarted her initially. But I do feel like she appreciates his intelligence, that he has to keep that hidden too, to some degree, because he doesn't want other people to know just how formidable he is. And I think that's why when she looks at him and she's thinking in that scene where she's touching his scar before it's healed, she thinks like he's made of something more than just this pretty flamboyant face that people see. So I feel like she recognizes that. And as we talked about before, I think she appreciates how much that she can trust him to handle things and look out for some of the people that she cares about. But I know we're kind of jumping around a lot. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk about like this scene here or just their dynamics in general. Christy, what are some of your thoughts about the Jinshi Mao Mao dynamic?
So going back to another scene in the OP, like it's so interesting when you go back to watch like the opening sequence after you know everything, because you catch like so many little details that you never would pay attention. You never would have paid attention to, or you never would have thought like it meant anything. Because like when I go watch some of the openings now, I was like, yo, that's a straight up spoiler, like right there.
Yeah.
In one of the openings, they literally showed like, I always forget, Suide rising from the coffin. I'm like, hello, like just put that in there. But I forget which one it is. It's either the third one or the fourth one, where it shows like little kid Jinchi with his ball, and he like runs up to Mao Mao, and like Mao Mao like as she is right now, and I just love it. I think it just encapsulates like their relationship, how he, you know, he sees her as his favorite toy that he doesn't want to let go, which brings me to something else slightly off topic, where his mom, the Empress Dowager, she like gave him a warning, like, oh, keep your favorite toys close because you never know when someone's gonna try to take it away from you.
Enrique noted that too while he was watching. He's like, oh no, I'm afraid now. He texted me when that happened. Sorry,
Yeah.
Chrissy.
No, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think too. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
But the thing is, like, he doesn't just see her as a toy anymore. Like, that's how he saw her originally. But
yeah, like for half a second, and then I feel like he immediately, the fact that he had like mushrooms growing off of him when she was gone a few episodes in, and he just couldn't handle the fact that she wasn't there. It's like, oh, buddy, you're a goner here. But anyway, Enrique, did you want to chime in about the whole idea of like the favorite toy and how it's now transformed into just he actually gets to be himself?
I don't like that he treats her more like a toy than a person. For the most part, where he's like, this is my toy, and if I can't have her, no one can. And then, like y'all said, like when she disappeared, it affected him greatly. Like he had mushroom brain quite a bit. And I'm like, this is obviously for the sake of the anime. I'm like, this is not a way a normal person should react when someone's been like missing. Like I know people, if they go missing, you like panic in a normal way. You don't get mushrooms growing out of your head, or you don't like.
Right, in season 1,
bizarre.
when she's not officially missing, she's out with Liaku, and he doesn't really know why. Right, well, there's the when she's out with Liaku, and then there's also the when she gets like fired part, and he's totally distraught. But yeah, I mean, I think how he initially treats her is he thinks like, oh, another pawn that I have to seduce so that I can get information and keep up to date with, which I feel like is a clue about his true identity pretty quickly, where you're like, why is this guy so concerned with getting information from everybody? But yeah, I do think that he does initially see her in the same way that she thinks of Xiaolin as like the gossipy girl she can get information from, and that turns into actually like a genuine friendship. I think he initially thinks, oh, I'm just going to use this apothecary who clearly has a little more intelligence than she lets on. And then it is just for him fun at first, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he's not reacting, as you're saying, in a way that a person would. But sorry, you can continue, of course.
That was it. That's where my thought process ended. Just like it's really bizarre how he treats her in that manner. So yeah.
Do you feel like it has changed though, and like deepened?
Yeah, it definitely has changed after like he met her dad in a way, because he's like, this is like a real he could see where her intelligence came from this what is he, a tactician, the strategist?
The strategist.
So I guess that's where he like sort of shifts. He's like, okay, I got to be careful, because not only is my favorite toy with the smartest man who figured out that I'm not really a eunuch just by looking at him, kind of thing. I'm like, okay, so now he has to, in my thought process, he switches it from her being a toy to being like a confidant, someone he could trust, someone who he could bite, apparently, and like be himself, as y'all were saying. Like he could actually be himself without always playing the role of the eunuch.
So you feel like the deepening of their relationship was kind of built upon seeing each other as equals more so. Yeah. And you feel like that major shift for you happened around the time that like Lacan entered the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
That scene in the opening, like when it shows him as a child and her as her like current self, I think it can also like interpret it as like when he's around her, he feels comfortable to act like a child, like basically. He didn't really have a childhood, but with her, he feels more comfortable to let that side of him out.
And I think too, because we see that when the like jaunt about town in episode or in season 1, which is one of my favorite episodes, when he's disguised, and he just seems like so happy to get to for once just kind of not be like the beautiful Jinshi, and he just kind of gets to derp around, and he's like excited about it. And she keeps having to tell him like, okay, this isn't how this would go. You need, but he kind of has to tell her too, like, you shouldn't just be buying chicken right now. Like they have to kind of remind each other. But then when they're like in the corner just eating together, and it's like weirdly so nice where you're like, why can't you guys just hang out more often? I will say, this is random, but Boston in the corner watching eating chicken too is really amusing. But I also interpret the idea of like what you're talking about, the symbolisms there with the child thing. And so I think that like he can be obsessive also, I think is a thing that they're kind of enlightening us toward with his character. But also I've heard the phrase, and it's kind of like cheesy, but it's sweet. The idea that, you're the person that is the love of your life is the person that, not that you just grow old with, but that the two of you can be like your inner child around, because it's such a vulnerable state, that to be sort of that innocent, more open person, like who you really are around another person, is kind of like the ultimate sign of trust. And then you can be silly and you can have the goofier moments. And I actually feel like the scene where they're reunited, the one that's in the background here right now, he like kind of is sort of more, because he had to like be very serious, and he had to lead this group. And then he was just kind of like smiling, holding her hand, and like he's obviously sad and tired and weighed down. And then he's like weird a second later, of course. But there is like the moments where he has the opportunity. And I feel like even the shift in his voice in the reunion when he finds her in that room, between how he speaks to her and the sweet moment when she's like, I miss this dynamic in her head. And then when the soldiers come in and his voice immediately goes back to what it was, it's like he's always having to put on a performance for everyone else, which I feel like contributes to this extremely lonely existence. Like when you see him all curled up, and then, when you get to actually see him interact with her alone. Also the name thing, when he just like couldn't say her name. And then he got some confidence, and he's like, I'm not gonna waste this half hour. It's pretty clear. I do like Gaoshin being like, hey man, you're making it really obvious. You need to tell her already, because you're kind of giving it away. And sorry, I'm rambling a lot now, but I love that when Jinshi's getting like anxious about the fact that Mao Mao might have not gone missing of her own free will, and something bad might have happened, and he's clearly stressed out. There's a moment where Gaoshin just kind of like puts his hand on Jinshi's shoulder, and not in a like get it together kind of way, which Gaoshin I think is good about, but it's more in like a paternal way where it's like, I know this is hard for you right now, and like we're gonna find her. And I was just like, oh, I love Gaoshin so much. I love him so much. But Sarah, I feel like you haven't had a chance. A lot of people have spoken about their dynamics, and I know you have a lot of thoughts. So what are your thoughts about them?
Oh my god. Well, okay, going back to the bite.
We're all the way back.
Well, so when I first read that scene, I was like, oh, what's happening here? Like,
yeah.
But it's definitely grown on me. Because, like, I said this in a voice memo to you, where they both kind of, like, both of them were raised in situations where they really don't know how to show affection or how to receive affection. So, like, in Mao Mao's case, she needs, like, something drastic in order to understand what he's trying to get across. And, like, he doesn't necessarily know how to show affection in a good way either. So that was just his, like, attempt at being like, hey, I like you. So I liked that.
I do feel like that feeds into the statement of like, do you understand? Like he's saying, like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Both of them could just use their words. They're not very good about that either. But
yeah.
Anyway, but
they always get interrupted. They can never have like a full conversation. Somebody always interrupts them, so they don't have time to discuss those things.
Well, I mean, we've also somehow managed to get through over an hour. I can't believe we've talked for over an hour. We've talked for over an hour and we haven't talked about this scene. So miraculously, I feel like everybody was losing their minds. And also, didn't Crunchyroll even release this scene and title it, "Is that a frog in your pocket?" Is that what they titled it? Which is hilarious that they would do that. But yeah, let's talk about this scene. So Enrique, I feel like you're the most resistant to buying into their dynamic, which is completely understandable. And I'm grateful that you're here to kind of be that push back a little bit on them. But what were your thoughts on this moment for the two of them?
Well, the infamous frog scene. You gave me a warning. You're like, hey, don't go on Instagram. Don't. If you've seen anything about frogs, ignore it. I'm like, frogs? Okay. So I watched it. I was like, oh, the frog, I guess. It was funny and really bizarre to me. And I was like, she's grabbing his junk and she thinks it's a frog. Like, has she not? Like, she's seen men like naked before.
She knows for
right?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. She grew up in a pleasure district in a little town, and she's like, oh no, this is a frog. It must be the frog. And you see his face. He's like, ugh.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's a little bigger than a frog. And then he gets offended. I'm like, why doesn't he just shove her off? Like, at no point
he does ask.
Think like, hey,
he does ask. He's like, can you move your hand, please? So he does try to ask. I feel like she's got kind of like a death grip down there too, though.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a little nervous about what's gonna happen. And she's like just so intensely staring at him in that moment too. I mean, because I've seen it more than once.
Yeah.
So yeah, like her face during that moment is pretty funny. But then her, like, in the sub at least, which I think is what we all watched, but in the sub, her noise when she realizes, she's like, oh. She like taunts on her, and then I can't get over when she was like, there was a frog, and then she starts doing like all these ridiculous gestures and his expression there. But yes, I do appreciate her her trying to, she just can't accept it, and also when she gets the ox Bezors later in the episode is great. I just want to say that really fast. And my favorite, I love watching Mau Mau making noises compilations. Anytime I'm not happy, I feel like I need to watch one of those to put me in a better mood. But that's probably the one that takes the cake, is her like over that. And I want to note when Gaoshin, like, I think it's Gaoshin that tells her like, oh, here, Mau Mau, I know it's not like the full one, but Jinshi wanted to give you this, and he wished he could give it to you himself, but he couldn't, about something else earlier in the season. And then she, I think, asks him like, oh, is there an update on these? And then somebody says something about like, well, it started to go around that he's looking for rare medicine, so the price has gone up. And it's like this very subtle, he clearly is trying to like get all the stuff that she likes because he cares about her and it makes him happy when she is happy. But he had to say his piece before giving her that. He knew there was no way. I do like when she's like, I'll take this to my grave. And she's like, or if it gets revealed, then I'll make sure he doesn't have any. But anyway, so this scene, other thoughts. So Sean, I was waiting. I was kind of like, I know this is the scene.
I mean, I think it's funny. It's a funny scene. Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. I just it is funny that he's like somewhat, large or whatever. He's very possible. Yeah, he's very proud, I guess, of his frog, which is good, I guess. I do think, like, I guess occasionally he's just a little creepy. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like I like him 99% of the time, and then he's like, when he's trying to be, I don't know, like sexy or romantic or whatever, like it doesn't work for me really. Like the like, do you want to find out thing? It's like, it's fine. Like, I don't think he's being, but it's also like, maybe tone it down a little bit.
It's the fan service. It's for the fans.
You're not a real fan.
I guess. Yeah. But I do really like the end of that episode, and I kind of forgot how hard he's trying to tell her who he is, and then it's just like, oh, here's your Oxybizor or whatever, and then it's like, I'm just like, out the window, you know. And I can't remember if it's that episode or a later one, but she's thinking like, well, he's not a eunuch, and only, you know, the people allowed in the inner palace who aren't eunuchs are, you know, the royal family, basically. And then she's like, oh well, and then she's like, just decides I'm not gonna
it's when
that train of thought. She's like, nah. Yeah.
It's when she first is early on in the kidnapping, and she's talking, I think, to Surrey, and she's trying to figure out, and then she does all the thought process you were just talking about, and then she thinks like, well, Jinshi was trying to tell me something, but then he gave me the ox bezoars, and that's enough to make anybody go crazy. Oh well, okay, and then like she just decides that like I'm just gonna shut this part of my brain off right now. But I mean, I think I'm not in disagreement that he can be weird. I think the weirdest scene is like the honey scene in season 1 when he just like keeps trying to get her to eat the honey. I think that's the weirder because like I think in this moment there is like a I don't think he's trying to be like sexy in this moment. I think he's like trying to tell her, and then she keeps going out of her way to be like, I don't know anything. And I will say two points. She like very comfortably immediately is like, my clothes are wet, and she just like takes her clothes off.
True.
So she does that, and then she does feel him up a lot, and he asks her to move her hand, and she's still feeling him up. So, and I do think Mao Mao,
I guess
almost.
So can I say one?
Of course.
Thing?
Yeah.
My only thing is occasionally, and I don't know if it's the fault of my interpretation or the animation or what, but she like kind of looks frightened. I think that's where like in that scene and like you know, when he's biting her, it's like, oh, and you're like, because I would get being surprised, but she I don't think she looked as comfortable.
She looked like, more like confused at the biting scene. But I think to be fair, he looks frightened of her all the time. Like when she like gets close, he's always like I think he looks afraid of her more. And I was gonna say like Mao Mao, I don't know if it's because she's so likable and because we know that she doesn't quote unquote like operate the same way as a lot of other people, that she sort of gets a pass for being out of line. Like she's going around and like sniffing women's clothing while they're wearing them and like going not literally under their skirts, but like close to. And then when she's like at the baths with her friends, she's just like doing this to Shisui, and she's like, what are you looking at, Mao Mao? And she's like, they're bigger than I realized, you know? And she's like, sorry. So like, she's being weird too. And I think that I'm not trying to say that you're incorrect. I agree that Jinshi can be very weird, but I think Mao Mao, like her weirdness
I wonder if it's like, maybe not fear, but like, this is like a breach of like protocol or our relationship, or like, I'm just your, you know, servant and you're like my master type thing, you know? Like, I don't know if it's like this shouldn't happen because of who we are sort of thing. That's kind of how I've rationalized it, but sometimes they just make her look like afraid. And I'm like, oh,
I think there's a resistance to getting more embroiled in the goings on of important people. I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's another fear, because she wants so badly to just like go, you know, chop off her finger and see what the effects are, and she's so desperate to do that kind of stuff that I think the second it's like, I think there's a fear of what's to come if this were to continue, because it's like if she becomes this close to him, then
or she kind of just shuts that part of her brain off. And then
she doesn't want to. She has this natural insatiable curiosity met with the resistance to be involved in things that could put her in danger. So it's like these two warring things constantly going on, and I think he kind of represents that in his entirety in her like dynamics with him.
Yeah, and she often thinks like when she does start piecing things together, she's like, well, I'm just, you know, nobody apothecary, so like what do I know? I don't need to think about this. And so
she's not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so Enrique, you kind of were bringing up Lacan. So this is a point I wanted to bring up. Before I do, I want to ensure that, you know, Christy and Sarah, if you had more to say, or if Enrique, you have thoughts about anything that Sean and I started discussing. Yeah, more frog talk. If you had more thoughts about this, I do want to say, and I don't want to forget because it's related to their dynamics, the conversation when he asks Mao Mao, am I only worth like my looks? And also her when she's talking about like if this were to scar for her own injury, she's saying like, then if that nullifies my value, then so be it, you know. I really liked that because they're like finally being serious with each other. And like, I think that is a point you had, Sarah, about like when they can actually talk, they have meaningful conversations, I think, with each other. But anyway, so I didn't want to forget that. But any additional things that we wanted to touch on with the two of them and their dynamics? Because we could do a whole video just dissecting their interactions and dynamics. But did you have more to elaborate on?
Dissecting the frog?
I know. Maybe they'll do that with Xiaolin at the school she went to. Maybe they'll start dissecting frogs. Jinxie will be forever traumatized by it. He's like, I can't visit the school anymore. Oh, and every time that she like when she's with Shisui and with Xiaolin, and she's like randomly thinking about it, and she's just staring at her hand, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "I don't want to talk about it." And then also when her face, like she gets the weird eyes when there's like the frogs and the locusts, and she's like, "Oh, you should eat one. You're not gonna get the frogs." And she's like, "I don't want to think about frogs right now." Yeah. So I do appreciate that. But anyway, sorry. Anybody have additional thoughts about their dynamics?
So all those like weird scenes where you're like, "Oh, Jinxie is like kind of creepy," and like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, to be honest, I just write it off as like typical anime hijinks. I don't really think.
I agree.
Because I'm like, it's pretty typical for like anime to have like this kind of stuff. And then the scene where they are like, Sean, you brought up how she was like, she's always like, "Oh, you know, not my business. I'm not gonna think about it." And then in the end of that episode, when he gives her the ox bazaars or whatever they're called, and then she's like, "Well, you know, whether Jinxie still has his balls or not has nothing to do with me because it's not like I'm gonna see them or anything." And I'm like, "Girl, you think that now?"
Well, she also was obviously one of the most ridiculous moments in season 1 is when she's like, "Now remove the final garment" to Liaku. So she's not opposed to seeing things sometimes, and she was, you know, on board to help him disguise himself in the Jaunt About Town episode. So, you know, it might not even be in the context of something more serious. Maybe she'll see in a less serious way, but yeah.
In that same scene, she's like completely ignoring him, and he's just like pounding on the door. I'm thinking like, dude, can't people hear you? Like, you're not the only ones here. Like, I'm sure. Like, anyway, but I thought it was really funny, and I do want to. She's so desperate and pathetic.
That he is that what you said?
Yeah, I love seeing him like that.
Me too.
Enrique, because I know you have to go to work today. I want to make sure if there's anything you want to add, doesn't even have to be related to anything that we've been talking about, but is there anything that you wanted to add to the chat before you have to hop off?
I think, Chrissy, you are a big dominatrix, ain't you? By the sound of it with you. Like, I like how he's just like groveling, and I like Jinxie for groveling. I'm like, okay, it's starting to click now. Like, big Jinxie in there.
Christy does like her men, her fictional men, dumb and obsessed. So,
okay, that made it click. I want to say something about Lacan. He's probably my third favorite character, just because the one scene when he finds out that Mao Mao's gone, and he's like, "She's missing. Oh my God, don't worry, Papa's coming," and then he like destroys the wall, and you see like the puff of smoke. And
I messaged Sarah, and I was like, "Wait, do I kind of love this character now?"
Oh my God, he's so cute, and then he throws out his back before he can even do anything. Yeah. That so hard.
He's such a goober. Yeah, I really like how much. I really want him and Mao Mao to like kind of have a relationship, but I also, and Enrique, I wanted to actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because I did want to mention the fact that the idea of her not being in the rear palace anymore, I do wonder if part of that is that she's not just a simple apothecary. She actually has a really important tie to a really important person, and it wasn't just Jinshi's identity that got revealed to everybody. In some ways, her identity has the potential to be revealed to everybody now as well. And I think that Lacan is like a wild card a little bit. Nobody really knows what he's thinking or how he feels about things. And the idea that his own daughter might have some sway over things, I think makes him formidable. But also it's like formidable in a good way or formidable against kind of characters that we have grown to like. So I want to elaborate on that, but I know you have to get going. So yes, I'm glad that the Lacan love was able to be said before you had to go.
Yeah, he's growing on me. At first, I did love their little go. I don't know. I think it was in season 1 where he and her had like this little match, and you could see he's like trying to win her over, kind of thing. Like if she wins, he does whatever she wants. If he wins, she goes with him. And I love that little game where they're playing cat and mouse. And she like poisons him. He's like, "Well, you passed out. You lost." He's like, "Oh my goodness." Watching them play that kind of game together, I think it was like really cool, really funny. And then his reaction, finding out that she was kidnapped, is like, again, one of my favorite scenes in the whole season 2. And another one is immediately after, where he puts his pride aside and asks Jinshi, like, "Hey, please do whatever you can to get her back." And he's like, "Oh."
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes.
Like,
yep. Yeah. And I do like Lauman coming in and being like, "Oh, I didn't know that's what you thought of me, a simple eunuch." And he's like, "I wasn't talking about you." He's like, "Oh, well, you definitely weren't talking to this important figure this way." You know, I do like that. I love, oh my gosh, her adoptive dad. When he was back in the palace, I almost started crying, which we'll talk about, except for not with you, Enrique. I'm sorry you have to go.
Yeah.
But we will, of course, reconvene in the future with you. But have a good day at work.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So the Lacan stuff, though, I do want to get more into that. So do any of you have some predictions for Enrique? I can okay. I wasn't sure if he was going to figure it out. I'm curious if any of you have. Sarah, I don't know if you can elaborate on this or not, but if anybody has thoughts on, because when Mao Mao left at the end, that was one of the things that we see in the last episode, of course. I was like, I feel like they could have kept her around. I feel like they could have found a reason. And I kind of wondered if it was in part because Jinshi in his own way is trying to protect her by not keeping her around, because he does have that thought of, this wouldn't have happened to her if I hadn't kind of pulled her into these things. And if I wasn't here, then she would have been okay. This wouldn't have never happened. So it feels like it's partially that. It also feels like a way to keep her away from Lacan too. Because I do wonder if because he's so, we're told all the time, he's like the master strategist. Nobody knows what he's thinking, and he's really intelligent. And then his own daughter has already gotten connections with all the high-ranking concubines. She's essentially like indisposable to a lot of people. Obviously, she's important to Jinshi. So it kind of feels like now is the perfect time. Well, I mean, I don't think he literally, but it just seems like they don't want to have another potential like threat or somebody who's disrupting quote unquote the peace.
So
after
I'm skeptical. I don't know. I don't agree. I have no reason to think anything negative of him. I feel like he was painted a certain way in season 1.
Yeah.
To make you think he's the villain, but since then I think he's been I have no reason to think he's not loyal to the Emperor. Why would I think that? He seems like,
well, I'm not saying I think he is.
Big fan.
I'm not saying I think he is, but Mao Mao has shown time and time again she doesn't want to be involved in the affairs that are, you know, quote unquote, above her or are more dangerous or more politically heavy. And I feel like it's almost a gift to allow her to go back to being an apothecary, because I think he doesn't just want Mao Mao to be his daughter in a more formal sense. I think he also, that would include her kind of entering his world. And I don't think she wants to be a part of that. So I'm not even saying that I think he's going to like try to, when I say disrupt the peace, I don't mean that he's going to do what the other clan just did. I just mean we don't ever know what he's up to. And I don't think Jinshi wants to deal with that, because we see that a lot in the first season of like, this guy always wants something. I never know how to get around it. And I think it's kind of a Mao Mao would prefer to be you know, an apothecary, and now it's more known to people, her role, and I think it would force her to have to kind of be seen differently than maybe she wants to be seen by other people. And Jinshi knows better than anybody
So
what it's like to not.
I don't know how much value women have in their society as anything but, frankly, in the inner palace, sexual objects, right? I mean, like, I don't know if she has a place in his house as, like, I guess I don't know what that would look like. She's just there, and you're like, I'm your daughter now. You know, like, I guess, like, she'd probably live there. Or maybe he'd, like, marry her off, like, to another family or something. I guess that's all I can think of. But I don't know if... I don't know. I mean,
that's possible, too.
But but at the same time, I feel like he doesn't seem like he would do that unless he was trying to affect his own, you know, political ambitions.
So my thoughts on this were, it was less about Lakan, because Mao Mao, she was in the court because she was Jinshi's servant. But now that Jinshi has revealed his identity to everybody, like, the position of Jinshi the eunuch essentially, like, no longer exists. So they have to think about, like, what other position can Mao Mao have in the palace now. But I also think, like, Jinshi kind of wants to keep her away from it too, because in this season we kind of start to see the Emperor take more interest in Mao Mao, like, you know, speaking with her directly, requesting things from her directly. And then there was the whole, like, episode with the doors. Yes, you prepared, where, you know, it was kind of implied that, like, hey, why don't you take this one as a concubine as well? Even though she's definitely not the Emperor's type, but I don't know, who knows what might happen in the future, right? And then it goes back to, again, like what the Empress Dowager said about, you know, make sure, like, hold on to your favorite toys, because you never know when someone's going to want to take it away from you. And I wonder if Jinshi's, like, afraid that the Emperor is going to take an interest in Mao Mao if she stays anymore. So I don't know. That's kind of like what I thought about why Mao Mao was, like, no longer in the palace.
I agree. I'm only mentioning the Lacan thing because I think it's all connected too. And I think with the Emperor, like, I think a lot of people are noticing just how important she is to Jinshi. And so, as much as possible, keeping her away, but close, I feel like is the best case scenario for the both of them, because she is pretty happy, I think, in this predicament that she's, oh, that's probably not the right way to put it, but this situation that she's finding herself in now is kind of like the best of both worlds. She kind of has, like, the favor of a lot of important people, but she gets to do what she enjoys. And then I think that the role that is sacrificing more is Jinshi, because obviously I think he would prefer if she was around all the time, but he doesn't want to force her into the positions that she's not comfortable in, because he knows better than anybody what that is like. But yeah, I completely agree that there's also too many important people that have taken note of Mao Mao at this point, to a point where it's like, this is why I feel like we need, of course, you know, we're going to watch more, or at the very least, we're going to be reading the light novels. So we'll see. But I don't think that she's going to get to live her little happy apothecary life for very long, because I don't think there's any way, with everything that she knows and who she is, that they wouldn't kind of pull her back in some fashion outside of just, like, Jinshi. And also Christy about, like, well, maybe
Rambo, like, she's like, just when I thought I was out.
Yeah. And you know, Christy, you mentioning, like, the Emperor, doesn't the Emperor even say in this scene something like, well, you know, you could take her? Like, I think he's kind of pushing for Jinshi in some, I think a lot of, I mean, we know Gyoko is always kind of like, oh, who is it that you want to take with you? You know, like, I feel like Gyoko's creating her own little soap operas around her. And I think she's trying to get information, which, Christy, I know is something you want to talk about. But Sarah, I know you probably can't say too much because you know a little bit more than us. But if you can kind of place yourself where you were before you had more information, what would you say your thoughts were at that point?
I don't know if I was really thinking about it that much. Like, I was just like, oh, well, she has to go back to being an apothecary. Like, I wasn't really considering it more deeply than that.
See, usually when I read things and watch things, I'm like that too. I'm just here vibing, but I know like we're gonna have this discussion, so I'm like, I need points to talk about.
Okay, so I got to talk about him for a second because I love him. He's one of my favorites. Sean and I both, because Sean was like, oh man, I was like, oh, they finally are like officially reunited. Tensions aren't so high and they could just like hang out and work together. And then it's like, well, he stayed and now she's gone. And it's like, dang it.
Oh, so
but it is so sad because in season 1, when she gets, that is one of the only times you actually see her showing affection is when she goes and lays next to him and he's like, oh, and she's just like, it's cold or something like that. She gives like a kind of silly reason, but you're like, oh, she misses him and it's sad. And she clearly loves and respects him so much. So I was so happy and I like that they kind of immediately revert back to him being like, make sure you ask before you just take his stuff. And she's like, okay, I love that dynamic.
And
with
you
them.
love the line of, I don't have a mother and father, I have a dad. I just have a dad.
Yes. Yeah. Every time it's like, because I've watched that scene a lot, every time I'm like, oh, it's so cute. So I love their dynamic and their relationship. And I do want them to just get to like hang out and, be at peace in some way. But he so clearly is back where he belongs in a sense, because like he's so brilliant and he's so kind. And I feel like so much of the trauma that's been inflicted on the people within the Rear Palace, they need like that comforting, reassuring presence that he has. And I love him so much. And it leads to some theories I have, but I want to make sure before we go into theorizing that we don't skip over some other stuff. So the dynamic with her and her father, I was sad that they were not reunited, but also I'm happy he's there. What were your thoughts when he like came back and his character in this season? Sean, what were your thoughts? Because I know you like him too.
I do like him too. I mean, I think I felt bad for the guy when Mao Mao goes missing again, and he's just kind of like, well, I can't really do anything. She was gone for 1.5 years, and you're just like, oh yeah, that is. He had no idea where she was, so he's just like, gotta do what you gotta do, He just kind of does his thing. So he's very realistic about things, I guess, in that way. And yeah, I'm glad they have a real doctor and not the quack doctor. As much as I like the quack doctor, it's not the best.
I like how much he just starts talking, and then Malmo's like, should he be talking about this in front of everybody? Like when he talks about like the envoy coming and stuff. And yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Oh no, that's about it. I like him. I kind of like that he was the first kind of sleuth who uncovered all of Mao Mao's little clues to, like, hey, I was kidnapped, by the way.
And she trusted his intelligence to piece that all together too, I think was a big part of it. Yeah, you did for a sec. It's okay though.
I'm back.
Yeah. I think also Jinshi analyzing like, oh, this is where she gets this from. Like a few things. One, the not speaking when
Did she freeze this time? Or am I
Yeah.
frozen? Okay. I
No,
think
I
what
was
she was going to say is not speaking when you don't have all the facts and waiting.
Yep. That's what I was gonna bring up too.
what were you gonna bring up? I'm back.
Yeah. Basically what you were saying before you froze.
That Jinshi recognizes like the speaking with certainty thing. And then the fact that he doesn't, like, he clearly is worried. He even says like, of course I'm worried, but I've gone through this before with her. And Jinshi realizing like, oh, the like subdued emotions is something she seems to have picked up from him as well. But anyway,
like in this society, it's just so normal for girls to get kidnapped that like you kind of just have to, like, people just accept it.
Yeah,
that's very depressing.
Yeah.
And the fact that I really think, as much as Jinshi can be weird, I think we've all kind of we're in agreement about that. I do think he genuinely cares about women, because he's the first time he hears about what happened to Mao Mao and why she uses the freckles as a means of safety and things like that. He's upset, and in her mind, she's like, "Why is he always so upset when he hears about this?" And it's like, because for her it is so normal, and for him it's like he still is able to come from a place of like, but this is wrong, even from, and I feel like it means that much more from somebody who has the power to do something about it, to still be like astounded by how horrible that is. And the fact that he wants to educate the girls, he brings Mao Mao in to ask her thoughts, which is a really funny moment when she's like, I think it's a good idea. They're like, what's wrong with your face? Yeah. And
I really like that part too. She so rarely just like smiles, and you're like, oh.
Even Gaoshin was surprised.
Yeah.
Are you feeling ill? I do want to say, once again, another point in the like Mao Mao can be a weird one too, is when she's like crawling all over Jinshi's desk, like, give it to me. And then Gaoshin has to like pull her off. So, but again, I think also, Christy, you pointed out it's like silly anime hijinks and stuff. But anywho,
can I just say one thing about silly anime hijinks? I do. So Enrique brought up Lacan like basically blowing up a building in his rage, and so when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's just silly. But then there's like a scene right after where there's like the gate is like actually like broken, and I was like, wait, did he actually like? Yeah. Oh, that's right, because they wanted cheap like wooden stuff. He's like, oh, to pay for my dad's like physical explosion of anger and worry.
Please give us a discount on the repairs.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, I guess that happened. Like, I don't quite understand, but
Yes, definitely, certainly that. But also, Sarah, do you have some thoughts on these various things that we've brought up?
Yeah, I mean, I actually also thought that gate scene was like where he destroys the gate. Reading that, I was like, oh, they're just being dramatic about it. But like, no,
that's in the light novel.
Yeah,
that's wild. Okay, that's
yes.
All right.
Yeah. So I also thought they were being dramatic when they were talking about it, but nope. Yeah, I guess he has even more to like be feared about than just his like mind. He like
sure.
Yeah.
Well,
crazy. And you know what? This brings up a good point, kind of back to the return of like Lacan and his dynamic with Mao Mao and that kind of stuff, is that even if he's not coming from a place of he's trying to gain something or he's trying to be sneaky, he clearly is not able to keep it cool when he's worried about Mao Mao. So if there's like any potential for Mao Mao to be in situations that he doesn't approve of, he already started telling off the person he knows is the prince. Like he's already telling him off, basically saying like, go get my daughter. I know your secrets. He's kind of comfortable pushing back against authority. And he also has a lot of sway and power and connections. So I feel like in a sense, there's also just the fear of he can't have, in the same way like Jinshi, people are like, you need to not be so obvious with your affection. I feel like there's also, it puts her in danger when he is more openly affectionate towards his daughter in a sense. So I feel like that's another potential dynamic. I just feel like there's something to that as well, but we kind of already
feel like we're dancing around it, and Enrique brought it up before he left. But when he finally like submits himself, like bows to Jinshi, and I was like, oh,
yeah, one of the best.
Really
one of the best scenes. That is the scene that Sarah was like, Moon Prince, because like you hear Jinshi's voice changing, and you're like, I was surprised because I'm like, oh, is it happening? Like, is he actually going to finally?
It's like, oh,
yeah, it's pretty great. So
the music was so good in that scene. It really brought everything together.
I do want to talk about because we haven't really talked about it yet, and it's a sad but very integral part of this whole season, which is the previous emperor, and he is awful, and I don't really want his stupid face on the screen for very long. But he obviously plays a role in literally everything. I mean, for her whole life, through his carelessness and his stupidity, her life was impacted greatly. I think in a lot of ways, pretty much everybody's lives were impacted by his actions, especially though we see all of the girls and the women who were victims to his behavior and his actions. So I feel like it's everything kind of comes back to this. And I think this is one of the best portrayals of one generational trauma that you see the effects of this have it's a lasting impact on generations after, and the ways that it makes people turn against each other who are not him. That the anger, it just, because they don't let these women leave after, the way that you see it and the way that it kind of festers so much. I think there's a lot to that, but also just the fact that I should say, especially Jinshi, when he realizes, because we've been shown that Jinshi does care about trying to make women's lives better, a lot of people's lives, but I feel like he sees the discrepancies in how people are treated. And when he sees the lantern, is it called lantern fruit or something? What is it called? But at that gravesite, and he realizes like that was a gift given to somebody at their grave, basically like it would have been better if you had had this. And that's a pretty dark idea too. And him realizing that, and then of course, one of the most heartbreaking scenes is when the one woman wants to poison herself because of the resemblance and the fear that it brought back. I think all of that is really hard hitting. But as I was saying, it's one of the best examples of trauma, and also the way that everybody's lives have to keep going past that point. Like you don't get to just stop and get better in this society. There's nothing in place to help you with that. And the way that everybody just kind of keeps it sort of a not so subtle secret. And I think from the very beginning of the show, with all the mysteries and there's murder and things like that, that I've consistently described it as like everything's so lush and beautiful and vibrant, but then it makes the darker moments all the more like we're just kind of covering it up with the surface level beauty. And I feel like this is a prime example of like the dark kept secret among all of this supposed beauty around it. So Christy, I know you really hate the Emperor, so if you want to talk about how much you hate him first.
Oh god, I hate him.
The previous Emperor, of course.
Yeah, I hate him so much. He makes me sick, but also the fact that he shares the same seiyu as Jinshi as well, so it just like furthers the resemblance between them. Seiyu is voice actor, so they're both voiced by the same person, and you see like the resemblance between them, which I'll get to theories and stuff later, but Jinshi, I feel like it's so tragic for him because he didn't know what he looked like before, but now like he realizes like how much he resembled him. But I just want to tell him like, no, Jinshi, like your resemblance is with your beautiful mom. Like forget about this guy. And okay, so we hate him. He's disgusting. And I'm not making any excuses for him. Like this isn't to excuse anything that he did, but you also kind of see like the same, I don't know, like it was like a weird dynamic between him and his mom. Like I'm not exactly sure what she did to him, but I feel like there was maybe a hint at like her, I don't know, like abusing him in some kind of way, because you see like how scared he is of his mom, and like maybe that's why he's just like scared of women in general. Yeah, but again, not to excuse like whatever trauma that he has, doesn't excuse like what he imparts onto other people.
Right, of course. And it is interesting because it does seem like his mother abused him in some fashion, and she is kind of like the center of the painting that he did too. So you're just like, what happened with them? Sean, were you gonna add something? No, he's just gross. You hate him too.
No, I just I guess I didn't make that connection, but it makes sense. Because she is, I guess I don't know anything about her. She's just kind of, all I really know is she's like that shadowy figure in like Jinshi's memory as a kid. But she does always look kind of angry. So
yeah, and they talk about her. The rumors about her is that she's the one that ruled in a lot of ways. So she seems to have held a lot of power. And the rest of the potential candidates for being emperor at that time, they tell you in the episode with the doors that they all died, I think, from an illness that came through. But I don't know, I'm kind of like, is that what happened? Because if she's this very powerful person, maybe there was more going on than that. Because I feel like a lot of the show is you get told something and then you have to figure out if that's true or not. Especially when it comes to things that happened in the past. Because even just now, Christy, when you're like, he looks like his beautiful mom, it's like, Aduo, in case that's unclear, because that's still unclear. It's like Aduo is his mom. The current emperor is not his brother, it's his dad. And I also think like Sure's family tree also, you're like, wait, and that was a lot of like, hold on, I have to. So yeah, she is emperor bloodline, and she is related to Lao. Okay, there's a lot of piecing that together. But Sarah, once again, I know you know a little bit more, but I don't know if you know a little bit more about this in particular. But the emperor and the things that he did and how it affects the palace.
Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of get hints of it even like way earlier. Like in season 1, I think it was at the garden party. Mao Mao sees Anshi, and she's like, whoa, she looks young. And like one of the other ladies in waiting like kind of like whispers to her how young she is, and Mao Mao's like, oh my god. But like you don't really see it until this season where you're like, oh my god, that's actually so disgusting and terrible. And I also appreciate the fact that it's very clear that they're like, this is bad, like this is a bad thing, he was a bad guy, like all around bad. But yeah, just rough.
It is. And I think I especially appreciate how much you hear from Jinshi's thoughts over and over again, like he was such a fool. And I don't think you really hear other characters say it that pointedly, but I think Jinshi in particular frequently is thinking like he's awful. He was awful. So I do feel like that is not just comforting, like you're saying, like to have the portrayal be that, but also I think it ties to Jinshi like not wanting to continue, because I think there's a lot of guilt in knowing like I am related to this person, and I think it was easy for him to kind of disassociate because he was like, maybe I'm not actually, maybe the rumors were true that I'm not even related, and there's all the questions of identity that Jinshi had growing up, and then to have it kind of forced upon him to confront, I think it just reiterates for him further how much he just does not want to continue that very horrible legacy, and that he, in a world where a lot of them, it's like, yeah, like Li Shu, you kind of hear that the current emperor, like he doesn't go to her, and you're like, oh good, that he's not, and that she, which I hate the way that her ladies in waiting treat her, but you kind of continuously are like reassured like he doesn't go visit her, and you're like, that's the bare minimum though, like it is the bare minimum. So it's nice to have Jinshi very, very directly be like, he was awful, and to go above and beyond to like protect the concubines and protect the women and try to make sure that they're in that they're okay, and set paths forward where their lives can be bettered and improved. I mean, even the fact that he tells Mao Mao like she doesn't know, when he's like, we look the other way for you about making medicine. So he's been like quietly trying to forge a path of progress without sometimes even other people realizing that. Did we want to, so Christy, you said you had some theories. Were your theories tied to this? Because I don't mind diving into theories now in the last chunk of the discussion, and then maybe point out a couple things that we didn't get around to that were great plot lines as well. But what are some of your theories?
Okay, so I don't even know this is anything, like, because this is like one of those anime where I'm like, if I don't pay attention, if I just like vibe, I just take everything as is. But then once I start thinking about it, I'm just like, I'm reading too much into things that are literally like nothing. So it's either like 0 or 100 when it comes to my experience with this. Yeah, the family trees were so confusing because I was watching it with my friend, and we had to pause every time they mentioned previous emperor, Empress Dowager. We're like, okay, we gotta pause. We gotta read that sentence again. And then when we talk about Jinshi's, like his role in the family tree, we're just like, okay, this is what people think, but versus this is what we know,
versus what he thinks too.
Right. So it's like two different versions of the same family tree. But one thing is, okay, I'm gonna go through just very random like brain dump right now. I don't know if this is going to make any sense. So the Empress Dowager, the current emperor's mom, she gave birth to the emperor when she was like, I don't know, I'm assuming like very
10.
Oh, that young.
I think she was about 10.
That. Okay, anyway. All degrees of wrong. Okay, so then she gave birth to Jinshi when she was 30. So then, and then Mama was like, even other people were noting, like, oh, is she, like, is he really her son? Because, like, given the previous emperor's, like, proclivities, like, he's not gonna touch her. But then we see that scene where she kind of, like, like, she's on top of him. So it's, like, kind of implied that she forced him. But then she was and then she, when she was looking at Jinshi, she referred to him as child of immorality, child of a mistake. And I'm like, what does she mean? Is she meaning that as like she forced her action of forcing herself on the emperor, or is she meaning something else, like she, like her infidelity and getting pregnant with someone else? So I'm like. At that point, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm thinking anymore. And then there was a moment where she kind of saw Jinshi resemble the former emperor. She saw their images fading into one another. And then she seemed almost surprised to realize that. And then she was just like, oh, just a coincidence. But then I'm like, okay, the coincidence. Is she referring to the color of the dress because they were both like yellow in the picture he painted of her and in the picture he painted in the room? Is she referring to the color of the dress, or was she referring to the coincidence of their resemblance? So
yeah, I think the show sets you up frequently to be unsure. I have this here in this scene. Surin, who is Jinshi's lady in waiting, says that his mother did not want him to grow up basically hyper focusing, and she's like, he doesn't have the opportunity. That's not going to work given his important position. And at this point, Mao Mao's just like, what important position? Because she's still like kind of not paying that much attention. But I think because we know that also Lady Surin was, you hear from the Empress, the previous Jinshi's grandmother / mom, depending on how you look at it. You hear her say that Surin used to be her lady in waiting. And given their ages, she's not that different in age from Lao Min, Mao Mao's father figure. So the whole like who was responsible for kicking him out and who was responsible for switching the babies. And I'm like, I feel like she had something to do with it. And we know that Aduo is still coming in and like acting as Jinshi sometimes. So clearly Aduo is still in the picture, and it's like, who's the one relaying the information to who? Obviously she played a big role in raising Jinshi. So when she says his mother, it's like, are you talking about the current lady? Or are we talking about Aduo? I feel like she knows. I think she knows who he really is. I don't even know if the Empress realizes that she, or the previous, what I'm saying. I don't know if she realizes Jinshi is not her son.
Yeah. So that's my point, being like, if her actual son was not the previous emperor's son, and then she notes that, oh, Jinshi still resembles him, that would be
right.
So
right, because she was pregnant at the same time Aduo was pregnant, and it's possible that she got what you're saying is it's possible that she got pregnant by somebody who was not the previous emperor. Aduo was pregnant with I still can't get out of my head calling him Kyle, but the current emperor, because of the dub voice, is so funny to me. Emperor Kyle. That's Jinshi's actual dad. So Aduo was pregnant, and she had a child, and then swapped that baby with, and it's like, well, who did the swapping? And I think Surin's I think she is involved, and I think she is in some fashion connected to all this. Sarah, do you know more of these answers and you just have to keep quiet? Is this one of those like Sarah can't say anything moments?
I don't really know.
Okay, so what are your theories then and your thoughts?
Volume 7.
What?
That tells us that however far you've read in the light novel, you don't.
Sean, what do you think of all of this also? Oh, okay, Sarah does have thoughts. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I guess I hadn't really thought too much into it, which is like, of course I didn't, because like, I'm just vibing with like reading these books. And I have to say, I have also been reading them really fast. So I'm excited to go back and reread them and see like if I pick up on other things.
Sean.
I don't know. I kind of want to go back to that episode now. I don't think I was paying much attention to what the Emperor Dowager was saying to Jinshi in that moment. Probably because I was too busy being like, wait, so that's not his mom though, right? And then Elle was like, yeah, Audrey is his mom. And I was like, but so wait, what? So I was probably talking through that whole speech because I was like, huh? So I don't remember what you're talking about with the child of infidelity? Is that what you said? Or
child
Immorality.
I mean, because that is interesting if she thinks that if she did cheat somehow, one, I'm like, who with? But two, it would be kind of interesting if she was like, wait, you do look like the old emperor, and I thought you weren't his. That would be kind of an interesting.
She could also think that, because I think, Christy, you were saying this, because of the act to
Yeah,
basically traumatize the previous emperor.
I mean, that's what it seems like to me, but I don't know.
That's
nothing as it seems.
Layers upon layers.
Yes, there always is. Like, everybody's so cryptic. That's why when specifically Surin says like his mother, I'm like, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about the one everybody thinks is his mom, or are we talking about the one that we think is his mom? And but it's interesting because even Jinshi used to think that the current emperor was his dad. He has that line where he's like, oh, the person I always thought was my dad, then I'm told later is my brother. And you're like, but I'm pretty sure he was your dad. So there's a part of me that's like, did the emperor and Aduo at some point, or at least the emperor, the current emperor, did he at least get to like kind of interact with him in a fatherly way for a while? And now as like a means of protecting his son, and Aduo, if that's for sure his mom, which we all are, we think so. But if that is for sure his mom, and obviously it was a childhood friend of the current emperor's, out of protection for her because of the baby swapping thing, it would make sense that he'd be like, I can't accept him as my son right now. I have to play into the idea. But then you're like, or does he think it's also his brother? Does he realize it's his, like there's so many, you don't know what everybody knows.
How would he know it's not his?
If Aduo told him, I think is all it would come down to. If she told him what she did, I think, but we don't know. We don't know how much everybody knows at this point.
That's why you don't do it.
Yeah. So I have, I have theories that Surin knows way more than, and I forgot to mention, there's a part where Hongyoung, the lady in waiting for Gyoko, when Mao Mao is saying, I know somebody who can help with the delivery of the baby. There's somebody who's like got experience with this. And Hongyoung goes, Lady Surin? And you're like, why did she think that? Why does she think that Lady Surin would have any? And she also seems kind of like afraid of her a little bit. And it's played off as like a joke. But also I'm like, I feel like there's a reason that she would know that this lady has some experience with delivering babies or handling babies. And also she's a person in an important position. So I don't know. I have my suspicions. But anyway, Sarah, did you have more to add before we go to the other theory that Christy has?
I don't think so.
Don't think so. Okay, so Christy, your other theory has to do with, speaking of Hongyoung.
Oh my god, I'm so sus of Hongyoung and Gyokyo because I feel like I was lulled into like a false sense of security with them because they're just so wholesome and so sweet and they're so lovely with Mao Mao. But I'm like, every once in a while they show like a side of themselves that kind of sets off my spidey senses a little bit. So one thing was when I went back to rewatch the first season, in the episode with Lady Huyo, the cotton rose dancing, sleepwalking lady courtesan, Gyokuyo, she had a moment where she was talking to Mama and she's like, oh, is it bad if I say that I admire her? Like, the fact that she was able to like leave and marry her childhood friend. So that made me, that kind of shows that maybe Gyokyo isn't as enamored with the emperor as she gives the impression of. Like she has some other life that she wants to go back to. And then there's also, okay, very specifically, there was a scene, I think, at the end of, I think it was end of second episode, when Gao Shin was letting Jinshi know that Lady Jin died. Right after that scene, there was a scene of Hongyan and Gyokyo. They're just sitting in her room in the dark, lit by a single candlelight, and Hongyan is just pouring tea for Gyokyo. And they both look so serious. And I'm like, what the heck is that about? So
they definitely seem, I was going to add to this, I just want to say really quick that you also, I mean, obviously Gyoko, we know she's been poisoned more than once, or there's been potential attempts on her life more than once. So in some ways you can maybe decide that some of her trying to pick up on rumors and stuff is out of self-preservation. But I do find it kind of interesting that when initially Han Young is like, I don't think Mao Mao should be going to the baths and talking to the other concubines and, you know, whatever, that kind of thing. And Gyoko's like, no, she can pick up on some useful rumors there and she can report back. And you're like, you do seem like especially involved with knowing the goings on, maybe more than, because it kind of comes across like, I do think some of it's for her own amusement, but I think some of it is to gain information, and the amusement part is sometimes true, but also sometimes a front, because she's just genuinely trying to keep up on things.
Definitely more shrewd than she gives the impression of. And then also in that same episode, I think it's either that episode or the episode after, when Li Shu had the issue with had the thing with the ghost in the mirror. And then Gyokyo wanted to send Hongyan over there to like, check up on her and stuff like that. And at that point, Jinchi was like, oh no, I don't think that's appropriate. We'll send Mao Mao instead. I was like, why does she want Hongyan to be there? Yeah, so I don't know. By the way, if I'm looking at it, it's because I have my notes and everything over there. And then the fact that they're from the Western region, and that's where we know like the Mother Royal and all those like people who think they are the actual like ancestral line that should be ruling comes from. So I don't think my theory for Hongyan is that she'll do anything for Lady Gyokyo, kind of like Feng Ming and Aduo. But I don't think they're evil. Gyokyo, I feel like she's in the palace, something to do with what her family wants. Is my theory.
I think that's fair. And the fact that everybody that comes into the picture that she lets in, they are always like her most trusted, she already knows them, has a connection to them kind of people. I think she's definitely, and I think she has hints as to who Jinshi really is, which is important to her, because if he actually is that, like, you know, he's a threat to some degree. He could be perceived as a threat. So to any boy that she has. So I feel like there's also a like, well, we're on the same side now, so long as you stay in your place. I think she kind of has that feeling. And I don't think that she would go as low as to poison other people herself, but like make it seem like she was a victim too. Like I don't think she's that level, but I definitely think, to your point, Chrissy, that she's more shrewd than she lets on. And now this half, do you have any thoughts about this theory that Christy has and these
slander?
You're a fan of Kyoko.
I'm neutral. I think she's fine. I guess I could see all those things, but I don't want to. She's a nice lady.
Is if we find out later, like the son that she gives birth to can't differentiate colors.
Yeah, that would be. I also think it's interesting that I was trying to figure out, I'm like, how does Lacan know that? Because Lacan knows this when he serves the grape juice, and he's like, oh, it's just got the most beautiful red color. And then whatever the guy's name is, when he's like, oh yeah, it's so pretty. And then Boston's like, what? Why didn't he comment on the fact that it's green? So I'm like, I guess maybe the Emperor would have told him. Like, that's feasible because the Emperor went through, discovered the whole color thing, and then maybe told Lacan. But if that's not how he got the information, then I'm like, how does he know this? Like, how would he already have this? You know what I'm saying? Like, how would he have gotten this information? It has to have come from the Emperor. That's
He's
the only
genius.
He just somehow knows that some of these people are red, green, colorblind.
Yep.
Anyway, Sarah, did you have thoughts on the stuff that Christy was talking about?
I don't know.
You don't know, or you can't say? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's more to it. Now, I want to ask, kind of like leave off here with, do we have any other additional like predictions or theories or anything? And then also if there's any random moments you want to mention, I'll go first in saying that I so happy for Li Hua that she smacked this lady around and then finally stood up for herself, because I think Li Hua has gone through too much. I mean, she lost her baby and she's had this like horrible woman basically trying to kill her and kill other ladies and like letting other women die. It's like, that woman was awful. So I was really happy for Li Hua in that moment. And then Li Shu, the same way I was talking about when Xiaolin cries, I'm like, no, when Li Shu cries over the mirror and like it's precious to her, I thought that was so sad, and I just wanted to have a friend. And I'm so happy that Jinxi and Mao Mao intervened and stuck up for her, and that Jinxi like kind of made that lady fall apart. That made me very happy, because I'm like, yeah, you suck, I hate you. So those will be two moments. We didn't really have time for going more in depth with them, but I thought those were two very great moments in the season. So any other theories, predictions, or moments that you want to shout out from season 2? Sean, I'll let you go first.
My prediction is I think eventually Mao Mao and Jinxi are going to end up romantically entwined.
Wow, that's a really insightful prediction.
Everything else, I'm just, I'm cruising. Whatever happens, I'm like, all right, cool.
I'm going to add that Sean was, after the biting scene, Sean's like, I think these two are going to need a safe word. And I was like, I think their safe word needs to be somewhat, because that seems to like instantly, Jinxi is like, what? Somewhat. So I feel like that's their safe word. Sean, do you have anything else to add on a serious note, or any scenes from the show that you like really, really liked or found funny? The cat is adorable.
Cat is adorable. No, I don't think
so. The cat moment is great when he just like shoves it in his face. That's a great moment. And also when they're looking at the books and Gaoshen's like, you should keep some of these. And he's like, no, I can't keep these. And then later he's like, where'd you get them anyway? And then he's like, not because I want more of these. And she's like, it's fine, I completely understand. And he's like, I swear. So I do like that scene a lot. Sarah, what about for you?
I just have to say I love the current emperor. I think he's just like having a good time.
He's such a bro.
That's what I'm like thinking, what the heck does the emperor even do? He
gets it on with his ladies.
And that's it.
He does seem to like his daughter. He
Yes.
plays with her and stuff, which is cute.
And he did let her keep the cat. But just when they're going through like the maze, he just like it just feels like a side quest for him. Like he's just like, let's just go through this maze.
I do like that.
He's just kind of like, shucks, I didn't get through again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like does not seem to faze him.
Yeah. I think
he's not worried about looking smart at all. He's like, oh, can I do it again?
Yeah. I think that's the only thing that I can think of right now.
I do want to add to because I was looking through like the photos that I had saved for this, and there's the one of Jinxi and where he's with the Empress Dowager and Gaoshen, and he's like, he's clearly doing this, and you know how Mao Mao notes like, oh, that's his nervous tick. I really like that they show him doing that even when Mao Mao's not around, because when he's thinking about what could have happened to her, he is like tapping. So I like that. That's not just like a thing Mao Mao notices, because look at her noticing things. It's like he actually does do that. So just a kind of compliment to the show. But yeah, Emperor.
One other moment.
Yeah.
Rage Jinshi, kind of scary looking Jinshi when he realizes
Sarah looks happy about
the fake Mulan with her mole. He looks real upset, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah."
Calm down.
I kind of like angry Jinshi.
I felt bad for that girl though.
I know.
She wasn't her fault. She was forced to do it.
I feel bad for her too. I feel bad for anybody that has to meet his wrath. I do like when Mao Mao in the first season was like, pretty people are scary when they're angry. And I think that proves true. He's terrifying when he's upset. Christy, were there some things that you wanted to point out?
Okay, so cute scenes is Lakan when he's like after he's all serious and then he's like, oh, let me show you this go game between me and my wife. I just love how in love with his wife he is. He's wife guy.
Aduo also being like, he's such a weirdo. He makes the Tanuki look normal.
Yes, I love Lakan. I hope he's not like I just hope that he continues to be like good. I don't want there to be any other kind of like reveal about Lakan. Okay, sorry, I'm just going through my notes. I had some other cute moments.
While you're going through the notes, I'll say something that I liked, which is that I liked that when the woman comes to deliver the letters to Mao Mao at the end, before she hands her the letters and they're just talking, the first thing Mao Mao asks her is, how was the crown princess reveal? And I was like, no, I don't know. I thought that was kind of cute. She wants to know. Christy, did you find some of the others?
The ice cream scene where Shisui like steals the ice cream and then Xiaolan's like, no, give it back. But then she feeds Xiaolan and then Xiaolan's like, okay, Shisui, it's your turn. And then they're so cute and it just makes me so sad that they can't ever like go back to that time.
I know.
I have a theory. And again, I feel like this could be a completely outlandish theory and feel free to clown me if this like makes no sense or nothing ever comes out of it. But okay, so again, I'm very specific with this. There is an episode. At the end of episode 4 of the second season, it shows the emperor visiting Lolan, and she's smiling and giggling, which doesn't seem like Lolan's usual kind of reaction, given how Shisui is like, she is chewing that abortion plant. She doesn't want to get pregnant. So I'm like, why is this one smiling and giggling? Could that be one of the actual, like one of the ladies in waiting pretending to be her? And she's actually excited to spend the night with the emperor. And then I noticed like that her hair in that scene is a little bit different too. So that like her bangs kind of cover the area where the mole might have been if it was that lady. And so now it makes me wonder. And then like at the baths, like when the ladies are all gossiping and they mentioned like, oh yeah, Gyokuyo is rumored to be pregnant, and so is Lihua. And oh, did you hear like it's rumored that Lolan might be pregnant too? So I'm like, is one of the ladies in waiting now pregnant with the emperor's baby?
That would definitely add a lot to the mix. Because if she had a son, then now Gyoko has another person to have to look into more. Although their whole clan, I feel like they're kind of under surveillance at this point also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and another thing is, okay, we don't know why the caravan happened to have all the scents that were like supposedly banned from the inner palace. The rear palace. I think Mao kind of just assumed that the court ladies told them which scents they wanted, but it's not really clear. But it's like the caravan is from, again, the Western region. So it's like, what if Gyokuyo? I don't know.
There's just so much. There's so much there.
It's just, I think it was unclear, like where those, like how those scents got in, like why they had those.
Season one did this too, where they left a lot unanswered to where you like kind of have that in the back of your mind, but you still get a good resolution. So I feel like they've done that same thing here.
Yeah. Also, one question that I was never answered for me was, why does Gaoshin know that story about the two sisters?
Yeah, I've wondered. I'm waiting for that to become a bigger thing. I think that the envoys, there's more to that. I don't know. I personally don't know if that's entirely clear to us at this point.
Yeah. Okay. I think
those are it. I have to say, I think Sean brought this up to me, but the school that they start, Sean started saying this and it made me laugh, from Zoolander. That it's the center for kids who can't read good and who want to learn to do other good stuff good too. So that's the school that they've started. And I thought that was amusing.
Has
but
anyone aside from myself and Elle here seen Hot Shots Part 2 in this group? Okay. See, every time we talk about the mole too, there's a scene where the woman takes off her mole and puts it on Charlie Sheen, and he goes, "You're lucky, mole." And that's all I can think of when during that whole scene.
I'm glad that we have ended on some silly notes, given there's a lot of,
one more thing. The ghost lady ghost story episode.
Yeah, where and because like
so weird.
Laolin's like, maybe it was her and she came back and tried to kill me because I'm Shenmei's, and you're like, wait, but like ghosts, that's not an established thing in this world, so like that had to be somebody, right?
But one thing is, okay, sorry to keep going back to Hongya and Gyokyo, and I swear to God, if neither of them turn out to be anything, I'm going to be so embarrassed. But Hongya was like, she knew the ghost story lady. She's like, oh, I got a lot of help from her before. Like, what kind of help?
Yeah, I think there's
you knew
more.
that the other two were going to that meeting. I don't know what that means, but she knew that.
Yeah, I feel like there's, and the fact that was where was that where the tunnel was too?
They
Also?
didn't go through a tunnel.
No, like where the little
think
kitten. It was in a different area. It wasn't where the.
It was a little shrine where the tunnel was.
Oh, okay.
Just because that lady had an association with Sure, so then I was wondering if like, and obviously they all have connections to the Western envoys because you see the Western envoys show up at the stronghold and whatnot, or the other area. So I'm like, yeah, maybe there's more to that. I feel like that is an unresolved plot line from this, of which there are actually, I feel like, a few. But this has been so fun. I was so excited to chat about this season. There's so many other things that we still could have talked about and we didn't get around to because there's so much to this show, and it's brilliant and it does things really well, and there's a lot of subtlety and there's a lot of funny moments and there's great characterization, so there's just so much to it that's great. It's been a lot of fun. Luna Bear, our dog, is very much wanting her food, so we do have to kind of wrap this up. But thank you to Enrique's not here anymore, but thanks to him for getting Crunchyroll just so he could watch all of Apothecary Diaries to join us in this chat, which was great. And of course, thanks to Sean and Sarah and Christy for geeking out over this story. And we will be reading the light novels. I'm so excited for that. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that very shortly. Well, not very shortly, like next month, but we're going to be talking about that soon as well. So anybody that ends up watching this, feel free to chime in with your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see everybody later. Bye.